here's how long you should expect your early retirement to last. Make sure you stay to the end because I have a hypothetical FIRE scenario that I've put together that I think that can really help just kind of illustrate this concept. But real quick, the short answer to how long you should expect your retirement to last. The short answer, I think, is probably a lot longer than you originally thought. And that's because when you look at statistics and you look at facts about how long the average person lives, it kind of is a little bit misleading, especially if you're generally healthy. Unless you know something otherwise, unless you know that you have, significant health problems otherwise, you might actually be living a lot longer than what you might see when you see that, that average number. Because there are different kinds of averages, and we're going to go over that. And those averages can be skewed in any kind of direction. And that skewness, that is going to mess up your planning if you're actually relying on that average number. And this just goes to show this is just being a little bit more conservative with everything you do when you're building your financial independence plan. So let's look at the first thing that most people look at when they're talking about how long they expect to live. And of course, it's not very comfortable to talk about because no one likes to talk about when they're going to stop living. But according to the CDC, the average life expectancy in 2018 was 78.7. Okay, so 78.7 years old. Now, if you're planning for your retirement, you might look at that and say, okay, so I should plan to until I'm about 78 or 79 years old. But that average can be a little bit misleading because for several reasons. The first reason is that there is a significant difference between the two sexes. So when you're considering male and female, there is a life expectancy difference. And so if you looked at that average life expectancy of 78.7 and you were a female, then you were drastically underestimating. If you look at it when you were a male, then you could be overestimating. Here's a difference from the CDC again. So at male, the average life expectancy was 76.2. Whereas the female life expectancy was 81.2. So that is a 5-year difference. And if you take the average between those two, that's how they arrived at that original number. So right off the bat, you can see the 5-year difference between a male and a female. So females generally will have to plan for a longer retirement than males were if they were, retiring at the similar age. But that's not the only factor that's going to affect your retirement planning. Another factor is what your age is already now. Because the older you are now, the longer you can be expected to live, much longer than the average. So for example, once you get to age 65, the odds of your life expectancy actually already go up once you are already 65. And according to that data, if you are a male, then you can add a life expectancy of plus 18.1 years, which puts you at an average life expectancy of 83.1. And then if you're a female, you can add an additional 20.7 years if you're already age 65, and that puts you at a life expectancy of 85.7. If you are already age 65, then your life expectancy is much higher than that original quoted average, the one that pretty much everyone goes off of. And then you have another complication when it comes to life expectancy, and that is your life expectancy at birth. So depending on what year you were born in, you actually can have a different life expectancy. So before, that average life expectancy, that was the average of everyone. But people who were born in much earlier years have a lower life expectancy, generally speaking, than people who were born in the later years. For example, I'll use my own year of birth, and that was 1994. So according to worldbank.org, someone born in 1994, a male born in 1994, has the average life expectancy of 75.62. And that is less than the average above that was originally quoted. And that's most likely because we have plenty of data from newer or younger people being born and added into that data, and therefore their life expectancy at birth is going to be higher than someone born in the 90s, where mine is generally going to be higher than someone born in the 80s, and so on and so on. And so that average, that like middle of the road average life expectancy, it's pretty much, if you think about it, kind of useless for your individual situation if you're planning for financial independence and if you're planning for early retirement. And the biggest complication that comes along with this is when we're actually talking about averages, because averages can refer to many different things. Mainly, it refers to 3 different kinds of averages, and that is the mean, the median, and the mode. Now, maybe you remember that from math class back in the day. And right now, we can go over that mean, median, and mode and how that affects life expectancy, and which one is probably best for you to plan for. But before we move on to that, if you're liking this video so far, please make sure you like it and give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out, and I really do appreciate that. It also helps send a message to the YouTube algorithm that you want to help support On Cash Flow, and you want more people to see this video, because believe me, they need to see this video. But moving on to mean, median, and mode, I think the short answer here is that mode is probably going to be the most applicable when we're talking about retirement planning, especially early retirement planning. I think the mode number is going to be the most applicable for us. And that's because when you're talking about the mode is the most occurring. So the most occurring number. So in this case, it would be the most occurring number when it relates to age of death. So the most common age of death. The median, on the other hand, would be the middle of everything. So the middle of all the numbers of death, including very young deaths and including very old deaths. So that would be the median of that. And then the mean, which was the most common way of discussing the average, the mean would be all of the ages added up and divided by the total number. And you can already see there that there's going to be outliers that are going to skew that. And so that's not going to be as helpful when it comes to determining what your likeliness is of how old you're going to live till. And if we go ahead and look at the mode age, which I believe to be the most applicable, we can look at it and see that it is much older than the average that was originally quoted by the CDC. So this I got from understandinguncertainty.org, and you can see the mode age of death for males is going to be 86 years old, and the mode age for females is going to be 90 years old. So that is significantly different than the original average quoted in the beginning of this video from the CDC. It is a lot more. There's a lot more age onto that, and that's because the mode is the most likely age of death. That is the most common occurring number. It's more applicable than the mean when referring to the average, because the mean is going to include all those outliers, and those are going to pretty much mess up the skewness, especially all of the early deaths in this case. And that's why it's bringing down the average to a lower age. I think it was around 76 originally quoted. But when you just talk about the mode, the most occurring number, it is 86 for males and 90 for females. So that is a lot, like a really huge difference, especially if you can expect to live that long. Then that means that you're going to have to plan for a retirement that is much longer than originally anticipated. You might be asking yourself, how does this actually apply to financial independence and early retirement? Well, assuming you are generally healthy and you don't have any significant health problems, you're going to have to estimate your age, like the age that you're going to live to, until be a lot higher than that CDC quoted average of 76 years old. You might have to estimate your age to be all the way up to 90. And so if you're financially independent, if you're becoming financially independent, you're on the path to early retirement, you might be retiring by age 40. And the difference between age 40 and age 90, that's a whole 50 years. That's a really long time to be retired. And so when you're doing your calculations, when you're utilizing financial independence calculators, and you're doing you're running your scenarios on there, and you're trying to determine your withdrawal rates and all that stuff, then you need to keep in mind a much longer time horizon, a much longer retirement time horizon than you might have originally expected. And it might even be longer because as we get better with medicine and hygiene and all that stuff, the life expectancy is going to continue going up. As long as you are alive and the life expectancy, and medical gets better and better, your life expectancy might go up. And so that might even go up, even from 90. That's probably going to go up, especially over the next 50 years. And so that's why when you're doing your financial independence calculations, I think that you should put in a much longer time horizon than you originally expected. For me, I've always used 60 years in my time horizons, but honestly, depending on, that's a really long time, and I might actually live well beyond an additional 60 years from where I am today, now that I am living the financial independence lifestyle. And just to share with you a quick little example here, I'm going to be using CFIREsim. Okay, it's a really popular financial independence calculator that I really love using, and I'm always on there utilizing it and just trying different things. But for this example on CFIREsim, I'm going to plug in a 50-year retirement, a $1 million portfolio, $40,000 of annual withdrawals, and then we're going to adjust the withdrawals up for inflation. For the investment portfolio, I'm going to assume 80% stocks and 20% bonds. And then I'm going to assume that you get $0 in Social Security, so a very worst case scenario that is actually pretty unlikely. But even with all of those, with a really long retirement period, 4% withdrawals, no Social Security, you get a 84% chance of success according to CFIREsim. I think 84% over a 50-year time period is actually pretty darn good, and the odds are heavily in your favor when it comes to financial independence and retiring early. And if you always want the odds to be in your favor, make sure that you watch a video that I created. It's a full guide to getting started on the path to financial independence. So make sure you watch that video, and thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Zach from OnCashflow.com, and I hope to see you next time.